Hello, and welcome to the Chapter 3 Example Part 1 overview. And in this example, we're going to start with example 3-1. And in this example, we're showing you an example of how to use the cin to get input into a variable. So here we're going to be prompting the user to enter the length and the width, and we're going to be using cin and the stream insertion operator to insert data from the cin object over to the length variable. And the one thing you'll notice is the operator are two greater than signs because it shows the arrow flowing in the direction of the data. So the data is going from the cin object into the variable. Okay, so here we just enter the length and width, and that gives us the area. Now, example 2 shows that you can actually have two variables on one line with the cin operator. You just have to separate it by two stream insertion operators in between the cin object and the first variable, and then the first variable and the second variable. The only difference here is you have to separate each length and width by a space in your input, or it's not going to work properly. So here we go. Okay, so if I go 10 space, say 20, and then the area of a rectangle is 200. Okay, example 3 shows kind of the same thing. The key here is to show that we can actually enter a variety of different input. So here we're expecting a whole number, fractional number, and a letter. So we'll go ahead and run that. So an integer, fraction, and a letter. There we go. Okay, example 4. Here we're showing that you can shows the decimal value of a fraction. So here we'll be inputting double. So we'll go ahead and run this. So we'll enter the numerator. Denominator. And it gives us a decimal value. So even though these I didn't put 5.0 or 3.0, it still converted them to a double, or read them in as a double, so that when it did the calculation, use floating point division. Okay, example 5. Here we show the input. We're calling for radius, and in our calculation here we show the use of the CMath library, and then we need to include that in order to use the power function over here. So again, we'll go ahead and run this. Okay, the radius circle is 10, and there you go. Next we have example 6, and here we're going to go ahead and calculate the average of 3 test scores. Now the key here is in this calculation that even though these are double, it's going to average all the scores out here. So let's go ahead and run this. Okay, so we'll do 1 test score, another, and another. There we go. Okay, example 7. Here we're going to use, we're going to demonstrate the use of overflow and underflowing. So if we add 1, here we have the variable short, a type short called testvar, and this is the highest value that a short can have. So if we add 1 to it, it's going to basically roll over and go to negative. And then if we subtract 1 from that negative, which is the lowest value it can have, it'll go back to the highest value, and that shows the effect of overflowing and underflowing a value. So I'll go ahead and run this, and there we have and the highest value here, the lowest. Well, here's the highest value. We add 1, we get the overflow, and then when we subtract 1, we get an underflow. Okay, example 8. Here we just demonstrate the overflow and underflow of a floating point. So it's similar to the last one, except here we're overflowing and underflowing a floating point value. So we'll go ahead and run this. And this, if we overflowing, just says infinity because it's too big of a number. And then if you underflow it, it goes to 0. Interesting. Now example 9 shows the use of the static cast to convert value from one data type to another. So here you have books, that's an integer, and what we're going to do is we're going to convert from the integer books to a double. So once you convert this piece that gets divided, this creates it changes the operation from an integer division to a floating point division. So go ahead and run that. So again, if I plan to read 10 books in 3 months, that's 3.3. Perfect. Okay, and then the last example was for part 1 is from chapter 10, and here we're going to demonstrate the conversion using the static cast from an integer to a character. So we'll actually show the character value of integer 65, which is the ASCII value. So this should actually print out a capital A. And when I go ahead and run it, we have a capital A.